in the context of why is this important as a Buddhist?
Yeah, we'll do a review, but
So as a friendly reminder, this is a Buddhism class.
no, let's just talk about what's going on.
Friendly reminder.
Okay, opening prayers. We'll just go through these so we can get, I think there may be a lot of discussion when we get to certain aspects. I'm going to go in more depth into the path of seeing and into the path of no more learning, which has the three spheres.
I'd like to lead the refuge and bodhicitta.
Great.
On the prayer sheet, if you have it, if not, regardless, as we get started, what you want to do, what we want to all do when we do this refuge, is to envision ourselves as, timeless, beginningless, endless beings who are, through this recitation of taking refuge, what we are doing is affirming our place in a tapestry, an interconnected, energetically interconnected, almost fraternity of like-minded consciousnesses who aspire to achieve liberation for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so when you say this recitation, think of it not just for yourself as, oh, here I am submitting myself to the teachings of the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha, but here I am reaffirming my commitment to being a player in this
Take a seat.
brotherhood of interconnected consciousnesses who together we together form what is called the Mahayana, the great vehicle. We together form the refuge tree. We together, by us reciting this refuge prayer, what we are doing is energetically, through the sound we make, re-energizing almost a subtle energy connection through this internet of consciousnesses. So with that in mind, we'll say it once in English and then twice in Tibetan. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha, through the positive potential I create by listening to teachings and the other paramitas, those are the 6 perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And so now, as it's chanted in Tibetan, envision yourself re-energizing your rainbow-colored internet connection through light. What do they call that? Fiber optic connection to all consciousnesses in the Mahayana. Sangye Chodam Soki Choknam La Jamchu Padu Dakmi Kyapsu Chi Daki Soki Pe Sonam Ki Drola Penshir Sangye Drupan Sho Sangye Chodam Soki Choknam La Jamchu Padu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Daki Chinyen Ki Pe Sonam Ki Droga Penshir Sangye Drupan Sho. And just revive that identity of yourself as a participant in this Mahayana. And then thinking in this interconnected way that your awareness and concern is for the entire matrix of all sentient beings. And so we say these 4 immeasurables attitudes, reaffirming our motivation for practicing Buddhism. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And that lays out our motivation for practicing Buddhism. It aligns perfectly with Buddha's teaching of the Four Noble Truths of the cause of suffering, the causes of suffering and the causes for the freedom from suffering. So it kind of points back to the Four Noble Truths. We'll skip reciting the invocation of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but refresh your visualization of the space you're in and the universe you're in as being surrounded by these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, who with you and us and all of us together, we create the Mahayana. And we're inviting them here to inspire us and help guide our discussion, to quicken the energy in any way that is possible in the realms that interconnect us with the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And then we move to the seven limb prayer, which is our statement of attitude towards the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, and especially our teachers that we access through reading, through personal contact, through YouTube videos, whoever is teaching you valid Dharma in whatever form it comes to you. Without them, we could not progress. And so the seven limb prayer is our statement of who we are in relation to the teachings and the gurus, and how we're affirming our understanding that without them, we cannot make progress. So the seven limb prayer is a vital refresher of understanding that without this openness and receptivity to the teaching, we will continue to be deluded in our own circular thoughts. So with that in mind, for the gratitude and devotion to valid teaching, we say the seven limb prayer. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merits of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until samsara ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate the merit created by myself and others to the great enlightenment. And then we just are aware that the teachers, the gurus, the bodhisattvas, the conveyors of valid Dharma in whatever form it comes are very happy to assist our efforts in any way possible. It's beyond our understanding, really. But in terms of an offering, the ultimate purpose of practicing Buddhism is to eventually achieve a state of completely purified thoughts that then generates a completely purified form, a completely purified environment with completely purified, joyous, happy, creative, sentient beings who have arisen and connected with their internal Buddhahood. And so we are on this path in order to help achieve this great enlightenment. And our visualization of that comes in the form of this mandala offering. And we'll say it in English because we want to visualize with this mandala offering that universe and multiverse that we intend to be participating in creating. So this offering is not that we're giving this to the Buddhists because they need it. No, this is an offering of our mental orientation towards creating something that is only purified and only joyous and creative. So with that in mind, we say, this ground, anointed by perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned by Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine it as a Buddha field and offer it. May all beings enjoy this pure land. And then we offer this visualized pure universe to the Idams with this Sanskrit Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. And now we go to the teachings, which is the information we need to make that purified reality eventually manifest for sentient beings.
The information's crazy. Okay, so last time, what we're still on the 3 vehicles and the 5 paths. And last time we identified these 3 vehicles and we identified the 5 paths. The 3 vehicles are basically they're methods by which a practitioner can follow pathways of consciousness that lead either to liberation from cyclic existence and the suffering of cyclic existence, or they lead both to liberation from suffering and to full enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. So those vehicles or methods are called Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, and Bodhisattva vehicles. The Shravaka, that's Sanskrit and it means hearer, and this refers to practitioners who hear the Buddha's teachings, and based on the understanding through their hearing the Buddha's teachings, they develop the desire to become free of the suffering of cyclic existence for their own benefit, to be free of it, to be free of the suffering, to be free of the cycle. And that's a perfectly fine motivation, because it gets you out of this cycle of suffering and death, rebirth and death and rebirth. The Pratyeka Buddha means solitary realizer or solitary enlightened one or solitary Buddha. And this refers to a being who, through their own positive accumulation of positive potential in their previous lives and their own devotion to meditation and the practices that will lead one out of suffering, have on their own developed this intention to become free of cyclic existence. They're not the same as a fully, when we're saying Pratyeka Buddha, solitary realizer, they haven't yet generated what we would call bodhicitta, the altruistic intention to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all other beings. And so that's not even brought into their view. So again, it is more of a self-oriented aspiration with the Pratyeka Buddha, because they haven't yet, developed that idea of being of benefit to all sentient beings. It doesn't mean that either the hearer or the Pratyeka or the solitary realizer are not highly ethical, compassionate beings, but they have not, or wise beings, but they have not taken that final step to go, I'm going all the way for the benefit of all beings with whom I am interconnected. So the bodhisattva, that's called bodhi, as we've discussed before, it's the same root as Buddha and Bud, which means awake, to awaken. So sattva means being, so we're talking about an awakened being or an awakening being. That's the bodhisattva. And the path of the bodhisattva is to first remove all of one's afflictive, obscurations, kleshas, the afflictive emotions. This is exactly what the hearers and the Pratyeka Buddhas do as well. They're removing all of their, what are called kleshas, afflictive emotions, afflictive obscurations, the anger, jealousy, attachment, greed, desire, lust, you name it. That all of these cause craving, cause craving, aversion, attachment, and problems. And so to free yourself of all of that makes you free of clinging, which enables you to be free of cyclic existence, because the root of cyclic existence is grasping, clinging, ego, self-grasping. So that's one of the things that the Bodhisattva does. Same as the Shravakas, same as the Pratyeka Buddhas. But the Bodhisattva has developed this idea from the start that the aspiration and the motivation for being liberated from samsara is so that they can go further and take that further and remove all of their ignorance, their cognitive obscurations that hinder the attainment of enlightenment. And enlightenment, really, enlightenment means it's enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. That's what a Buddha is. A Buddha is someone who has gone all the way to enlightenment, and the purpose being to be of benefit to all beings. So the goal of a hearer is to become what is called an arhat. An arhat, it means one who is deserving, and it really refers to the fact that an arhat has removed all of their kleshas, all of their afflictive emotions and disturbances and obscurations, and they have gotten themselves out of cyclic existence. But an arhat is doing this for their own benefit. Same as Pratyeka Buddha, because they haven't, developed that altruistic attitude. Doesn't mean they can't, and they probably will eventually, because eventually we all have to come to the realization that we are interconnected, and that it's actually what we would want to do is to help all beings with whom we are interconnected. It only makes sense, really. It's quite logical if you analyze it. So we're very fortunate to have met with the Bodhisattva path due to our teachers from the very start, because what they say happens is, this question came up last week. Well, what happens to an arhat or a Pratyeka Buddha when they're just sort of liberated from cyclic existence? What's going on? And basically, what our teachers tell us is it's almost as if they are somewhat still asleep, because they haven't woken to the fact that there are numberless beings out there who are still suffering, and all it takes is this aspiration to go all the way to enlightenment, and then we can truly be of help to them. Because if you think of it, there's no way we would even be discussing any of this if it weren't for our teachers who taught us this, and their teachers who taught them, and back and back and back, all the way to Shakyamuni Buddha. And they say there were Buddhas in eons before that. So it's almost like a beginningless, endless lineage, you could say. Because what they say, I asked Geshe Drachma this once, well, how many sentient beings are there? Because the idea is you've got to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So I said, how many sentient beings are there? And he said, well, it's infinite. Infinite number of sentient beings. So if you wrap your mind around that, and there are no new sentient beings. There are no new sentient beings being, in other words, like created. It's beginningless, and it's endless. So it's a very difficult thing to wrap your mind around, because I remember talking to Geshe Drachma about this and just going, I'm not sure I can figure this out. There are no new sentient beings being created. They are infinite, and they're beginningless and endless. He said, yeah, that's right. And so, all right, if you think about it, well, obviously the only way to deal with this is to get yourself all the way to an enlightened being, and then your experience is one of just helping for as long as it takes. And since we're talking about infinite, we're talking an infinite joyful experience of being of benefit, and bringing one by one sentient beings to this realization of the nature of reality. And I'm fine with that. At first I didn't even know what to make of it, because we're all goal oriented, right? All right, get to be a Buddha, get to be enlightened, get everybody out of there, and we're done. And we're not done. We're just never done. It never is done. If you look at the word Om, which is the beginning of the Om Arapatanadi and Om Mani Padme Hum. Om is referring to the nature of existence itself. The nature of existence is that it is in continual flux. It's beginningless, it's endless, it's continually in motion and movement, and in the process, which is what impermanence is. And that's never going to stop. That will always be, there will always be this continual flux. So it's up to us to, are we going to generate the causes and conditions that this constantly changing moment to moment experience is one of suffering due to the causes and conditions that we generate, or is this constantly changing moment to moment experience that is empty of any independent existence, is that going to be one of benefit and happiness and healing and wholesomeness? And is it going to be that? Because we're the ones who can decide what causes and conditions we want to generate based on our thoughts, and then on our actions, and then on the way we speak, the things we say. So that's all we have to do. It sounds like, nothing, but it's our habits are so strong, grasping at a me, an I, an independent, self-existing ego me, that it's so ingrained in us that it's quite a process to undo that and begin to turn it around. So any questions on the differences between a difference between a hearer, solitary realizer, and bodhisattva?
No, I just want to point out that our lineage is bodhisattva.
Absolutely, it's bodhisattva. Yeah,
Just
Mahayana
obvious.
Mahayana
And
is
so,
the great vehicle.
everything we do and all the practices we do are aligned with bodhisattva.
And what our teachers say is that it's best to start out that way, because even if you are wanting to attain liberation for your own benefit, eventually you're going to have to generate this bodhisattva aspiration, because it's the only logical thing to do. Otherwise, you're just sitting there for infinity going, I'm out of cyclic existence, now what? There's work to do, in other words. So they say it's best to just start out faking it. Fake your bodhicitta, fake your altruistic aspiration, fake it till you make it. That's what the Venerable Ravina says all the time. Just fake it till you make it, but start out that way, with that intention in mind, that motivation in mind. And eventually through the practices that will grow, and logically it will grow too. I've seen this in myself. I did not have bodhicitta when I first met our teachers. It was only through them, the observation of them, and engaging in the practices that they instructed me to do, that bodhicitta began to become very logical to me, made sense to me, and then I begin to feel it. I begin to actually feel it in a heart sense, rather than just intellectual sense. So I think it's something all of us can do. I think we all have it in us, but it takes some work. It takes some work. So that's what these paths are about, and particularly the bodhisattva path, these vehicles, or I should say the vehicles. So for each one of these vehicles, there are five pathways of, you might say, ascending consciousness that one has to go through. And so, and each of the vehicles, the arhat, the hearer, the solitary realizer, and the bodhisattva, go through these paths in slightly different ways because of their motivation. The Arya and the Pratyeka Buddha really wind up being on the same path, because neither of them have generated the bodhicitta, so they're basically going along the same route. So the first is, we talked about the path of accumulation. And in the path of accumulation, we're doing a lot of once you're on the path of accumulation, you will really, really beginning to understand the Dharma in all of its aspects. Right now, we are learning about the Dharma. We're not steeped in it for sure. We don't understand every single aspect. We're all still learning the Dharma. And the path of accumulation, you are steeped in it. You have already been working on learning the Dharma. You've come to a point where, this is the most important thing. Because they say you don't reach the path of accumulation. So for a hearer or a solitary realizer, they have actually entered the path of accumulation when they have unceasingly, day and night, the desire, the wish to be free from cyclic existence. So that's a big, big thing. Most of us don't have that unceasingly day and night. Occasionally we go, yeah, it would be really nice to be free of this. But we're also very much in this world. We are attracted to the things of this world. We're attracted to the goals and the things we need to attain in this life to be happy. And we're still, a lot of us are still there. There are things it's not like the most important thing is to get out of this. So there has to be this unceasingly day and night desire to be free of cyclic existence, to enter the path of accumulation for the hearer and the solitary realizer. For the bodhisattva, it's the same thing, unceasingly, day and night. You want to be free of cyclic existence, but not for yourself alone, but for all of the infinite, beginningless, endless sentient beings. So that is and they say you have to have this spontaneous realization of bodhicitta, and then you are on that path of accumulation. So we're still, Lama Pasang said, we're not even on the path of accumulation. We're developing the causes and the conditions to arrive at the path of accumulation. So the way Kavita termed it last week is that we're not 1 year old until we've gone from 0, the first day of our life, and gone all, 365 days, and then we can say we're 1. So we haven't entered the path of accumulation until we've done all this work unceasingly, day and night. We have this desire and this motivation, and boom, then we have entered the path of accumulation. So any questions about that? Guess not, okay. So the next one is called the path of preparation. And this is where we develop an inferential realization and understanding of emptiness. What all 3 vehicles are doing are working on developing a direct realization of emptiness, because it's a direct, non-conceptual realization of emptiness, the emptiness of self and the emptiness of phenomena, selflessness and phenomena, that is going to release one from cyclic existence. That's basically the key. So the path of preparation is to really familiarize yourself. We continue to familiarize ourselves with the Buddhist teachings, with the teachings on emptiness, with having a cognitive, clear understanding of the Buddha Dharma, of cognitive, clear understanding of what emptiness is, and a inferential cognition of that. So what that is doing is that's preparing us for the next path, which is the path of seeing. Path of seeing is when we've had a direct, non-conceptual realization of emptiness, we have entered the path of seeing. We're there then. We've gone from, one birthday to the next. And, when you have that direct realization of emptiness, you are on the path of seeing. You've gone from accumulation to preparation to seeing. You are now having a direct realization of emptiness. And what you do on this path, the path of seeing, is you familiarize. Oh, I didn't mention on the path of preparation, as we're preparing to have a direct realization of emptiness, we do these practices of calm abiding and special insight. So it's shamatha and vipassana. And these are done in conjunction with one another. So the way Geshe Dragpa told me about this, I was asking him about some meditation practices I was doing that he had given me to do. And he said, what you do first is you get a conceptual understanding of emptiness. Get some kind of insight into what emptiness is. And when you feel like you have a little aha and you've got that, then you hold that single pointedly in your awareness for as long as you can. You hold on to that little aha, that little mini realization of, oh, this is what they were saying. So that you sort of lock it in, and you keep doing that. You keep combining this special insight, vipassana, which is what do they call it? Superseeing. Special superseeing is actually how vipassana is translated from the Sanskrit as special superseeing. It means you're having a very clear insight into the meaning of what emptiness is, what the teachers are talking about. So it's very much it's conceptual, but it's very insightful. It's very, very, very clear. And so then what you want to do is then hold on to that clarity in a single pointed way, as if it is the object of your meditation, and you single pointedly focus on that for as long as you can. So that is all also part of the path of preparation. Then that brings you to the actual path of seeing, where you have the direct experience of emptiness.
Is there a description of what that is? What a direct experience of emptiness?
You mean a direct realization of it?
Yeah. Like, how would you know that?
Is there a description?
Let me see. Well, what they say is that once you have this,
I don't think either of us have ever read a description, just quickly to answer directly.
right? I mean, it's
So
something.
based on that quick answer,
What they will say is that there is no more doubt in your mind whatsoever. There's just you know this to be so. And you also, I mean, despite what some of us may think right now, you know that you're not deluded about this either. You know that this is so. This is a very direct connection with the nature of reality, and so there is no more doubt. But you know, those are just words.
Okay, so the experience of realizing emptiness, I'm gonna just make a guess, okay, so based on my understanding, what they say the factors are. So you get to your realization of emptiness through this contemplation of dependent arising. Every single thing is dependent, and when you try to pinpoint anything, be it subject or the action or the object, none of those things can be found. They use the terminology, if searched cannot be found, because the causes and conditions, the factors that lead up to a kavita, you can keep going back and back and back infinitely, not only back in time, but also, the food I ate, the air I breathe, where does that come from, on infinitum with everything. So what they say is, as you analyze that, and once you have sort of like that, oh my gosh, it's like the rug is pulled out from under you, and there's sort of a vacuity arises in your consciousness that is co-joined with a sense of immediacy, the presence of immediacy of the momentary dynamics, the dynamism of existence. So it's visually, it's sort of like a clear vacuity is the terminology they use. At the same time as the rug is pulled out from you in terms of everything familiar that we
Grasp onto.
We tend to think of things as being reliably there, when we have this, we sort of like suddenly realize, oh, I'm in a parachute falling infinitely. And not only that, I am just thoughts that are continually morphing with the dependence on these particles that are continually, it's just like that. So they say it's the first awareness, the first time you experience awareness, they refer to this, the rug is pulled out from under you, and it's like you say it's generally speaking for an ordinary person for the first time, it's frightening because it's sort of like, oh my gosh, because you're kind of coming face to face with the infinitude of every factor that we tend to think of as being a discrete. But
right,
anyway, I've never read, I mean, this is, pieced together from what monks have said, Geshe Drapa in particular, but I've never read a description. It's sort of like, how do you describe the taste of
chocolate,
molasses or whatever it was?
you can say
Anyway,
all kinds of things.
But that's a really interesting question. It'd be worth researching.
This is
See if
what
somebody
the,
has tried to capture this,
yeah,
because would help us sort of know what we're going for, but.
this is
Yeah,
what
okay.
the path of preparation is about. When we're on that path of preparation and we're combining special insight with single pointed concentration, and it's all about emptiness. This is what we're preparing for, a direct realization of emptiness. That's what the path of preparation is, getting you prepared for that moment.
I wanna
You know?
just inject at this point, because to bring it into daily life and relationships, what they say, remember, we're in the lineage of Mahayana, which is we're having this conversation because our teachers have said that ultimately to understand this makes us more fully capable of being ultimately part of the solution of samsara and not contributing to the perpetuation of samsara, to put it like that. So, although it's intellectually challenging, and although it seems to be an intellectual nerdly exercise to unpack these things at an intellectual level, they the idea is that through this understanding, our conduct in terms of how we interrelate with other beings, other sentient beings, and our environment becomes much more, we carry a lot more responsibility with terms of our actions of body, speech, and mind, because the more we feel the reality of dependent arising and emptiness, the more we are aware that everything we think and say and do is affecting everything. Think about when you go into, I know most of us have sat in meetings and had someone come in and shift the energy, and everybody's happy because I used to work with the CEO. As dysfunctional as he was funny and happy and he was lovable. And when he came into the meeting, it was a much more fun meeting. Similarly, if we've been in meetings, we have experiences of somebody who's comes into the meeting angry and pissed off, and all they talk about is negativity, and it triggers everybody's recollection of negativity. And the next thing so our job in this Mahayana vehicle is to be the uplifting. And they say by studying this philosophical view, and the more convinced we become of how things do exist, the more careful and mindful we are with how we're only contributing to the uplifting. So it seems sort of like this intellectual, and because it's, they spend, what is it? I think 7 years, they studied the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, which is the sutra on how things exist. And you could lose sight of why,
The other night, the other night I was watching Tibetan children. I was researching the three spheres, because we're going to talk about that. And there was a YouTube video of Tibetan children talking about the three spheres, but she was talking about it with a group of students who were all studying debate. So it was in terms, the way they were talking about the three spheres was very arcane, and they were Tibetan children reading from this text that was describing in debate language what the three spheres are. And by the end of and this was like an hour and 30 minutes or something, and by the end of it, Tibetan children and all the people were in hysterics because they couldn't even make sense of what she was reading. She said, do you even know what that means? I mean, they have these debate, which is what the monks studied, what Kavita was talking about. To understand these concepts, they have so many very precise terms that stand for very precise states of consciousness. And when you start rattling off these terms, it just becomes almost ridiculous if you aren't steeped in that and studying that. And so what I'm going to be presenting today is kind of like a very, very beginner's overview of what they're talking about when they're talking about it. Number one, we're going into this right now, the path of seeing. We're going to be talking about the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena. And those are very, very important topics and relate directly to an understanding of the three spheres of agent, action, and object. So we'll move on to that now. This is part of the path of seeing. So the path of seeing, of course, is when you finally have that direct aha. As Kavita said, it's like, oh wow, the rug really got pulled out from under you, and you have a direct realization that this is what it is. This is what they're talking about, So at this point, when you've had this direct non-conceptual realization, you become what is called an Arya being. So it means noble one or worthy one. And so when you become an Arya being, you gain direct insight into the Four Noble Truths that the Buddha taught in his first discourse, public discourse. And the reason he called them, or the reason they are called Noble Truths, is because these are truths for Arya beings who have had a direct realization of emptiness. An Arya being understands exactly what suffering is. An Arya being understands exactly what the causes of suffering are. It understands that suffering can be removed, and they understand the pathway that needs to be taken to remove that suffering. It's not just an intellectual study of a discourse given by the Buddha. It's a direct insight into what the Buddha was talking about and what the Buddha was saying. This happens when you have a direct realization of emptiness. So for all of us who want to know, is there some sign that I've had a direct realization of emptiness? That might be one of them.
Whoever finds a description and in order to win the prize, I'm not sure what the prize will be. Whoever finds the description, be sure to find one that is aligned with the lineage like that we're in with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Because it'll be different, it'll be different based on the practitioner. So it'd be most helpful to all of us if it.
I do not think it
I know
can
that
be put
doesn't
into
make
words.
sense. It can't be different ultimately, but the words used to describe it.
You won't find the words because it is a direct, non-conceptual
I've never read a
realization.
description of how
It's
this chocolate
non-conceptual,
tastes
so you can't put it into concepts.
like. Okay,
Okay,
thanks.
so
Well,
we can sort of end that little test.
Find one.
Let me find something that's not in
I'm sure the
concept.
prize will be really good, whatever it is. Free breakfast with, you get to have dinner with Geshe Nemo when he's here.
Unlimited.
Wish you could do that anyway.
I was just thinking, as you were talking about that, Christopher, I was trying to think about a conceptual description of what
Yeah,
non-conceptual experience of emptiness might be. And if one of the objectives of this work is to be of benefit to others, I wonder if it's not an approximate experience when you are of benefit to someone else without any intention of reciprocity, any intention of acknowledgement, any intention of being elevated, that you're
Mhm.
just simply doing it because somebody needs assistance in this moment, since
Mhm.
we're all supposed to be in this moment.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if that's not something that might be considered approximate.
Maybe so, because what I think all of our experiences are in that kind of thing is there's a loss of a sense of self and other when you're really doing that, when you're just like, oh wow, this is all about, helping. So um it's almost as if you're this person you're trying to help is as important to you as you are, so it's kind maybe it's something like, maybe there is a hint of that in there. Very quickly we fall back to our, old ways of me and mine. But in those moments, I think maybe, yeah, maybe there is some hint of that for sure. Yeah. All right, now we're going to get into the realization of the selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena. We've talked about this before, but we're going into more depth on these now. Nagarjuna identifies the ignorance that grasps true or inherent existence as the root of cyclic existence. It's the root, grasping at inherent existence. The antidote that eliminates this ignorant grasping is the direct realization of the emptiness of any kind of intrinsic nature or self-existence. Because ignorant grasping is of two types, grasping at a self of persons and grasping at a self of phenomena, there are two types of emptiness or selflessness that must be realized: the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena. The selflessness of persons refers to the absence of an inherent self-existence in persons. Here, the word persons refers to the personal identities that are grasped by any of the numberless types of sentient beings wandering in the three main realms of samsara: the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. In Mahayana Buddhism, these types of beings, which could be posited as species of beings within different realms of existence, include hell-like beings, ghost-like beings, animal-like beings, human-like beings, god-like beings, demigod-like beings, beings who are in a state of meditative absorption with very subtle bodies, and beings in a state of meditative absorption that exist as unembodied consciousnesses. Those are all in the realms of samsara. The word persons also refers to liberated and enlightened beings, including Aryas, Arhats, Bodhisattvas, and Buddhas. None of these persons, up to and including the Buddhas, have any kind of intrinsic, inherent, independent self-existence. The person is the one who wanders in samsara, cultivates the path, and attains liberation and enlightenment. Is that clear? What is meant now by persons? So what we're needing to realize is a selflessness of this.
Would it be accurate to say that somehow the labeling of the name is related to this person? The person,
The person exists as the label.
So I
That's,
go,
I mean, basically.
Kevin, and so I have a whole clump of Kevinness that I'm putting this Kevin label onto.
Yes, absolutely.
Is the label a critical factor?
Of course, it's the name that's given to it. But it's like anything. We call this a coaster. But in reality, what is this actually?
Okay, so the coaster has a selflessness of persons.
This has a selflessness of phenomena. There's a selflessness of persons, which is a personal identity of a consciousness, right?
I see, of a consciousness.
Right, the selflessness of phenomena is an identity that we place upon a collection of impermanent
Space particles.
particles.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and in this case, this was put together by a human consciousness,
Okay,
right?
sorry.
So, but it only exists as a coaster because we label it as a coaster.
Okay.
And
But
give it the
Kevin,
function.
getting back to selflessness of persons,
Kevin is the label for
Kevin exists because of all of the clump of things that make Kevin-ness.
right.
And what we want
The body, the
to
mind.
say that that's somehow a fixed.
And it's not fixed, as we all know, each one of us we're constantly changing, not just our body, we know it's
Okay,
constantly changing.
Are you gonna go into what the factors of selflessness of persons consist of?
We're going to continue, yes.
Okay, good.
All right, now we're going to move on to the selflessness phenomena before we go into and this will this affects what you're thinking of in terms of selflessness of a person. The selflessness of phenomena refers to the absence of an inherent self-existence in phenomena. Here, the word phenomena refers in general to all. Now listen to this, what they're saying phenomena refers to. This is extremely important. Phenomena refers in general to all beings' 5 aggregates. These are the aggregates of form, feelings, positive, negative, or neutral. These are all phenomena. Discriminations, the ability to discriminate, the karmic conditionings and propensities that we have in our aggregates, and the consciousnesses. This is all falling under the selflessness of phenomena. Let me repeat this. The word phenomena refers in general to all beings' 5 aggregates of form, feeling, positive, negative, or neutral, discriminations, karmic conditionings and propensities, and consciousnesses.
So let me just restate it slightly, changing the syntax. Selflessness of phenomena is referring to the 5 aggregates of all beings.
Yes, but it goes further, okay? But if you think, when we're saying, well, what are you talking about? Consciousnesses are phenomena. Well, when we're talking about our aggregates, what we're talking about is eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousness, and mental consciousness. These are all part of the aggregation of what forms what we call the being. The person is just an add-on. The person, the I, the me, has no place in any of this, actually. It's an idea, it's a construct, it's an add-on that we put on top of this.
It's an avatar.
Yeah,
Avatar.
it's like when you finish, painting a painting, you give it a name.
Right. So that's what the I and the me is. And yet, this I, me, and the self-grasping ego is at the root of psychic existence and all the suffering that occurs due to that. So don't underestimate the power of the I or the me, even though it is just a construct. And it's a construct that comes out of these aggregates, the selflessness of phenomena that are these aggregates. Is that kind of clear? Because this is where it gets very.
Yeah, let me just give a practical, an everyday example of the selflessness of phenomena and how it might be helpful. Say, for example, you are in the kitchen and you drop a knife and cut your foot. Now, the selflessness of phenomena, so what aggregates are involved there? You got your physical form, you've got the discrimination,
The
oh, a
feeling.
knife dropped, you have the feeling, my touch sense consciousness has been triggered by the knife penetrating my skin. My conditioning reaction, unless I'm a masochist, would be ouch.
Hmm.
A masochist might go, oh
Oh,
yeah.
do it again.
And then the consciousness, I don't know, gives meaning to the whole thing.
The consciousness then goes, my foot,
My foot has been.
mine.
Yeah, okay, so.
The construct gets very upset.
Having an appreciation for the selflessness of phenomenon would, at the very beginning, at least would lessen your.
At an intellectual level.
It would lessen your,
Yeah.
oh my God, how could this happen to me? Type of.
It just gives us a different way to start to even think about it. And that's getting a foot in the door of understanding the selflessness of all of this. But there is more. So let me go on with this.
I will let you go on. Sorry.
The word phenomena also, and this is extremely important when we're getting into the three spheres. The word phenomena also refers to the way in which phenomena appear to each being's aggregates. Remember, this is sort of like the aggregates is our interface with everything that appears to be outside this interface. So the way everything appears to our aggregates is directly related to the aggregates themselves. So this includes the way in which a particular being's own form and the form of others appear to it. We'll talk about this later, but this goes back to what Claudia was talking about when she was saying different species have different ways of perceiving and viewing. And so, for instance, the fly does not see a human the way a human sees a human, or the fly does not, we see a fly in a particular way based on our own aggregates. But that's not what the fly is necessarily seeing at all. And the fly's experience, as Claudia said, even of time, is completely different than a human's experience of time. So this is what we're getting into, the three-sphere situation here now. So these include the way in which a particular being's own form and the form of others appear to it. 2, the way in which the appearance of certain phenomena trigger specific positive, negative, or neutral feelings in each particular type of being. We all know that certain things can trigger our attachment that nobody else, other people we know, it doesn't do a thing for. And we also know that certain things can trigger our aversion and our anger that other people would go, what are you getting so upset about? So it's very, very specific to our own particular aggregates and the conditioning of them based on our karma. How we have evolved into this as a particular specific being. This also includes the way in which phenomena appear according to each particular being's capacity to discriminate or distinguish phenomena. So in other words, a fly does not distinguish the couch in the same way as a human distinguishes or discriminates or distinguishes the couch. It's a completely different experience based on the aggregates, which are based on the karma, the evolution, you could say, of the particular species, which is the evolution is, in Buddhist terms, it's karma. This is also, it includes the way in which phenomena appear according to each particular being's karmic conditionings and propensities, and the way in which phenomena appear to each particular being's, and we're not just talking about humans, each particular being's eye consciousness, ear consciousness, smell consciousness, taste consciousness, tactile consciousness, and mental consciousness. Claudia also mentioned this. Raptors can see spectrums of light that humans can't. We all know dogs can hear sounds that humans can't. Each species, each sentient being, and even each human being, from one human being to another, experiences things in a different way that is specific to them, specific to their conditionings. This is really, really important here. None of these appearing phenomena have an intrinsic or inherent independent self-existence from their own side. As we said before, Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, I think he said this, I think maybe Rabina asked him this question. I mean, she was saying, well, is there anything there? Is this just all, an appearance, of our karma, of our karmic propensities? And he said, yes, it is an appearance of that, but there is something there. But what is there is so subtle. What is there for instance, what is here is not an iPhone. What is here is something so subtle. It's as if it were an illusion, because a human being will see this as what we have labeled it as, an iPhone, and with a whole understanding that it's hooked up to the internet, there's all this information and pictures and all these things that we can get out of this. A dog has no idea about this. A dog could look at this in a completely different way, label it in a different way, not even see it in the same way that we see it. It doesn't project onto it all of the things that somebody who has like a human would project onto this. So each, and then when you get to the kind of beings that have different ways of seeing, fly again comes to mind, because they have many, they see multiple things all at once. They're not going to see the same thing we're seeing. So it is all very, very, very subjective according to each sentient being and where they're at in terms of their aggregates and in their consciousnesses, which are part of their aggregates. Yeah. Is that kind of, does that make sense?
To your point earlier, Kavita, about ascribing, in your example, Kevin-ness to me, or Kavita-ness to you, or Christopher-ness to Christopher, that emergence of the sense of I in all of this is direct. It is at some magnitude directly related to the karma that the current consciousness has accumulated, which then results in, this is a coaster, this is me, this is you, kind of thing.
Right, a human, a coaster, a pill, yeah. Now, when we're talking about karma, we're talking about sentient beings with consciousness. That is very debatable that this has any kind of consciousness in it. That it's a suitable vessel for a consciousness to embody. It's debatable that a pillow has consciousness in it, that it is a suitable vessel for a consciousness to embody, because what consciousnesses do is they embody kinds of subtle energies that can develop into various forms. I mean, we're talking about the whole birth process and the sperm and the egg and whatever, or however particular beings are born, and then they grow out of that. And it's according to Buddhism, we're talking very, very subtle levels of matter that a consciousness is connected with. Now, you hear stories about, I mean, even Lama Zopa Rinpoche, somebody brought him a cup that they said, this is possessed by a being, And Lama Rinpoche said, well, yeah, there's a consciousness who was so attached to this cup. This was some little village, I think, in not Tibet, I don't know where, maybe Nepal. So attached that consciousness couldn't leave that cup after they died. They were just like, wouldn't leave it. And so Lama Zopa did some kind of, letting the consciousness go, letting the consciousness realize this is not going to do you any good to hang on and grasp onto this thing that you thought of as yours. So it all depends on what is a suitable vehicle for consciousness to embody, because consciousness is just clear and aware. It doesn't have a form. And yet it is, they say when consciousnesses travel from lifetime to lifetime, they travel with a very, very subtle form of matter, which is like light energy, that they are connected to. But the light energy is a subtle form of matter, not consciousness. So the two are always going together. So in other words, what's out there is some subtle form of light energy at its very at a subatomic level, and each consciousness sees it in a different way depending on their particular form, their aggregates, the way they can perceive, the way they think, the way their consciousnesses work.
Would it therefore be a manifestation of clear consciousness that you would have the same, in your previous example, the same vision as a fly, the same sense of sound as a dog, or
Yeah, that is still clarity and awareness. That's all consciousness is, whether it's a fly's consciousness or a dog's consciousness.
So at some point we become open or connected to, aware of, tapped into, whatever metaphor of all of that we would have at. Right.
You could become aware of all of that, because that's the capability of consciousness, is to be aware. In other words, I think that's what they would say is omniscience, is the awareness of all of it. And only somebody who is enlightened, a Buddha, who has removed all of the cognitive obscurations, has that kind of omniscience. I can see the direct practical value of omniscience in terms of if you want to help others, because you could immediately size up some being and know who is suffering in some way or having some kind of problem, and you would know the entire reasons why they're that way. You could be aware of that. The omniscience could be able to see that in some way, and you would know what way to help them that will help them move along on the path to some kind of healing or some kind of better way of being. It's not that you can wave a wand and change anybody, because if that were the case, that would have happened already, whether it was God or a Buddha. And it obviously hasn't, so that's not the case. So yeah, and we're talking about things that as of yet none of us have had direct experiences of. I'm just relaying the information that's being told and trying to put this together in a way that we can find some kind of logic and what's helpful, say, like with when Claudia was describing the way different species experience different things, science has a way of observing this so that we can sort of draw an analogy when we're looking at these much more esoteric kinds of points, to go, yeah, I guess this is similar to what science is pointing out between different species and the way they observe things in completely different ways, have different experiences, different kinds of cognition. And yet we as humans think everything is the way, this is the way things are. This is the world a fly lives in. This is the world a snake lives in. And in reality, that's not the way it appears to them. So this is an appearance appearing to a human consciousness.
So I had this discussion with somebody and they said, what difference does it make to me if I know how the fly experiences the world? How does that help me on the path to?
Well, if you're talking about suffering, and you're talking about infinite consciousnesses that have the capacity, actually, because according to Buddhism, every consciousness, even the fly's consciousness, has the capacity to go all the way to full enlightenment. The reason any of us find ourselves in various levels. Like in Buddhism, you have all these realms that they talk about. You know, the hell realm, the ghost realm, human, animal, all of this stuff. Well, even if you were to look just on this planet alone, you could find examples of all of that kind of thing, all of that kind of suffering, all of that kind of deluded ways that we would say deluded, even in terms of a hell realm or a hell being. There are situations on this planet which I can't imagine hell could be any worse than what's going on in this planet between humans and animals and all of that. It might as well be a hell realm, and the experience that people are having might as well be hell. So we don't have to look in terms of going into other realms of existence. We can just look at this one and see that those situations are like that. We can see what would be like God and demigod types who have everything that the world has to offer, and yet they're still not happy. And yet there's still suffering. That's the God and demigod realm. And yet there's jealousy and infighting. And, you know, so it doesn't matter how much money you have, how much wealth, how much prestige, fame, whatever. None of that matters in terms of suffering. That's the point. The whole point of the Buddhist teachings is to end suffering, whether it's for the fly or for, you know, your nephew. You know, that's the reason why these teachings are given. So let's move on. Because as we get into the three spheres, this business about the selfness, this phenomena, comes into play. All right, the ego self-grasping of a personal identity or personal I is at the root of cyclic existence. However, grasping a self of persons, which is grasping at one's own personal I and the personal I of others. So like if I grasp at that's Kavita, that's Kevin, I'm grasping at a personal I or an identity. You know, I'm not going, that's a bunch of aggregates and there's a being in there and I've given her the label, you know, Kavita, and the same with you. I've given you the label Kevin, blah, blah, blah. We don't do that. We just, that's Kevin, that's Kavita. We sort of grasp it. That's who they are. You can't even think of your mother or father without imagining the way they look. It's impossible. You know, you think of your mother and, oh, there's going to be something. It's not just the way they look. It could be the way they smell. It could be the sound of their voice. It's going to be some aspect of their aggregates. Could be their sense of humor that comes to mind when you think of someone you know really well. So this is how we're grasping at the I, at the person as being those aggregates. So the ego self-grasping of a personal identity or personal I is at the root of cyclic existence. However, grasping a self of persons, one's own personal I and the personal I of others, and grasping a self of phenomena, one's own and others' aggregates, and all phenomena that appear to those aggregates, which includes all of this, everything that appears to us. Those are not considered to be two separate roots of samsara. It's not like the ego grasping at a personal I and grasping at the self of phenomena and grasping at the self of persons, including other persons. Those are not considered to be separate roots of samsara. They're all considered to be the same root because they have the same, what they're grasping, each one of those is grasping at inherent existence. That's what the problem is.
Golly.
So the only difference between grasping at a self of persons, a self of phenomena, and the ego self-grasping of a personal identity is that the ego self-grasping of a personal identity or personal I superimposes inherent existence onto one's being's own I and mind, rather than other persons and other phenomena. But we're doing the same thing with ourselves. And they're saying for each one of us, the root of cyclic existence is when we do this to ourselves. I, me, mine. This is what's generating this ego that's for ourselves is causing all of the trouble. And the things we'll do because of our ego and what it is we want, and the things that we think are getting in the way of what we want. All we have to do, we don't have to look further than the wars going on right now on this planet. And that's all because of ego. It's all because somebody's saying, you are in the way of what I want. And they're saying, no, I'm not. You're the one in the way of what I want. And so let me kill you. Just get rid of you. And that's what we do. And this is causing all of the suffering. And the cycle continues over and over because we don't get it. We don't understand. The problem is grasping at inherent existence of all of this, not understanding that it's all at the continual moment to moment dependent arising, and it can all change if we generate the causes and conditions for it to change. Moment to moment. So, is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Without you saying so, it points out why consistent ethical
That's the whole point.
behavior is so
That is
vital.
why those are the first practices the Buddha
It's
gave.
vital.
The very first practices. If you look at the seven limb practice, which is one of the very first practices we're instructed to do, along with the refuge visualization. This is the first thing our teachers told us to do, is that those practices train you to change the direction of your ethics from ego self-based to what's good for everything, what's going to make everything work. And the more you do those practices, the more you are training your mind to think and behave, and you're training yourself to act in ways that will bring about these positive, beneficial changes. But it doesn't occur without practice. It won't happen. And so this is why they say this is the first thing you need to do before you can even hope to get a sense of what emptiness means. Because we're so disturbed. You think people fighting over, on the other side of the world, killing one another, care about emptiness? They're not thinking about that. There's no way they could be. They're suffering too much, So, all right. So we talked about this last week. Heroes and solitary realizers, when they have this this direct realization of emptiness, and they understand the selflessness of phenomena and the selflessness of persons, they become what are called stream enterers, and they open the eye of the Dharma. They're stream enterers because they have had a direct realization of the Four Noble Truths. And they realize that the Eightfold Noble Path the Buddha was talking about is a stream that is going to lead them to nirvana, or the cessation of suffering, which is what nirvana is referring to. Nirvana is referring to blowing out something, eradicating something, or bringing something to its end. It's a cessation, and it's referring to the cessation of suffering. And in particular, it's the suffering caused by cyclic existence. This is what the hearers and the solitary realizers are interested in. And this is what occurs. This occurs for them when they've had these direct realizations of emptiness, selflessness of persons, selflessness of phenomena. They are now working towards the cessation of the suffering, the nirvana. So as stream enters, the hearers and the solitary realizers no longer have the view of a personal identity or I that grasps a real self which exists in relation to the five aggregates. Their doubt in the Buddha, the Buddha's teachings, the Dharma, and the Sangha of all the highly realized beings, their doubt vanishes, as their doubt of whether they are valuable sources of benefit and help, it vanishes for them because they've had a direct realization and they know for sure that this is so. They no longer cling, I said this last week, they no longer cling to rules or the idea that correct performance of ceremonies has some kind of special power in and of itself to bring about liberation. They realize liberation is due to a direct realization of the emptiness of any kind of inherent nature. According to Nagarjuna, hearers and solitary realizers realize both the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena on the path of seeing, although they may initially think it is only necessary to realize the emptiness of a self-sufficient, substantially existent person or I, the construct. In order to be liberated from cyclic existence, both kinds of selflessness have to be realized. So the reason we got into all of this is that the next stanza that's in this text talks exactly about that. And then Nagarjuna is pointing out that a hearer will not be released from cyclic existence if they do not have both realizations of the selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena, those kinds of emptinesses. Otherwise, it just won't occur, which is why we got into all of it. All right. What the bodhisattvas do when they've had a direct realization of emptiness and they've had a realization of the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena, they don't become stream enterers going to cessation as being the end goal. They then begin this whole process of going what they call bhumis. There are 10 levels, 10 ascending levels of realization that finally brings them ultimately to Buddhahood. And on the path of seeing, they start on the first of those 10 levels, or bhumis. So that's what's happening with the hearers, solitary realizers, and the bodhisattvas on the path of seeing when they've had the direct realization of emptiness, selflessness of persons, selflessness of phenomena. Hearers and realizers go on to nirvana, and the bodhisattvas are on their way to enlightenment, following these, ascending these 10 bhumis. The next is the path of meditation, which we will quickly go through this. It's the path of meditation is both the hearers, solitary realizers, and the bodhisattvas are familiarizing themselves with this realization that they've had, stabilizing it, repeating it, getting very familiar with what emptiness is and the realization of emptiness. And they're working on removing the hearers and solitary realizers are now working on removing the subtle, you could say, stains or remnants of their afflictive emotions, their kleshas, it's sort of like the way the monks described it, it's like when you clean a salad bowl, a wooden salad bowl, there still will be the smell of garlic on it. So even though they removed their afflictive emotions, there are still stains or remnants or subtle obscurations due to those afflictive emotions that still have to be removed. And this is what is happening on this path of meditation. For the bodhisattvas, there are still cognitive obscurations. They've removed all of the afflictive obscurations, but there are subtle stains of the afflictions that the bodhisattvas are removing on the 10 grounds. But the real important one that's blocking the omniscience of Buddhahood are the cognitive obscurations. These very subtle cognitive obscurations that have to do with an understanding of the 3 spheres. And so this is where we're going now. We're going into the path of no more learning, which is the end goal. The path of no more learning, bodhisattvas become enlightened. That's when the path of no more learning begins. It's over. No more learning has to happen. And at the path of no more learning, arhats and solitary realizers, hearers and solitary realizers become liberated from cyclic existence as arhats, but not enlightened beings. Okay. So So they've removed the afflictive obscurations and the cognitive obscurations. These are the obscurations, the cognitive ones, hinder omniscience, the insight into the nature of things as they are and all that exists. These obscurations arise from not realizing that all phenomena are of a non-dual nature and from apprehending them instead to be various kinds of subjective perceivers and perceived objects. For this reason, cognitive obscurations are defined as conceptualizing what are called the 3 spheres. So now we're going to get into more detail than we did last time on the 3 spheres. Where are we? The three spheres, I'm just going to read through this so we can get through this as quickly as possible. The three spheres are subject or agent, object, and action. For example, if you think of a child looking at a toy, the child is the subject or the agent, the toy is the object, and looking or seeing is the action that's taking place between the two. When the three spheres are conceptualized or concretized, that is, they're seen as inherently existing, this is a cognitive obscuration. In the example of a child looking at a toy, if it appears to us that an inherently existing child is looking at an inherently existing, looking with an inherently existing I consciousness at an inherently existing toy, that is a cognitive obscuration. When the three spheres of agent, object, and action are seen as empty of inherent existence, in other words, seen as dependent arising, there is no cognitive obscuration. Since the root of conceptualizing the three spheres is the belief in the inherent identities of agent, object, and action, all obscurations resulting from apprehending an inherent identity in the three spheres are cognitive obscurations. The cognitive obscurations are eliminated by insight into the emptiness or selflessness of persons and phenomena. This means realizing the emptiness of the five aggregates, the emptiness of all phenomena that appear as objects to the five aggregates, and the emptiness of the actions, the seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, discriminating, and karmic conditioning that are at play between the five aggregates and the phenomena that appear as objects to the five aggregates. Cognitive obscurations are much more subtle than afflictive obscurations, and they are difficult to remove. Mainly what they impede is omniscience. They prevent beings from directly perceiving both conventional reality, the appearances, and ultimate reality, the emptiness of those appearances, simultaneously. They consist firstly of latencies of the afflictions that remain on the mind stream even after the afflictions and their seeds have been eliminated, like garlic in the bowl. Garlic smell in the bowl. And secondly, the aspect of the mind that continues to mistakenly perceive inherent existence. Only fully enlightened Buddhists have completely eradicated these latencies and obscurations. The realization of the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena that occurs in the path of seeing is key to realizing the emptiness of the three spheres and the removal of the afflictive latencies and cognitive obscurations that hinder the omniscience of a fully enlightened being. As we learned with Claudia's presentation in session 24, organisms don't perceive an objective reality. Instead, they perceive a subjective one. Each individual sentient life form filters out what is not needed for their particular mode of being. This is seen by human science as an evolutionary biological process in which each organism perceives what it is fit to perceive in order to maximize effective functioning within its sphere of existence. DNA carries the genetic instructions for each organism that determine its biological structure, function, growth, origin, evolution, and distribution. Buddhism does not deny biology, evolution, or DNA, but instead views those scientific studies and observations as being folded into or part of a much more expansive view of the evolution of consciousnesses and forms over beginningless cycles of birth, growth, activity, expiration or death, and rebirth. In Buddhism, it is the karmic process, the conditioning and propensities of each being based upon that being's habitual actions, intentions, and interactions with their environs and circles of relationship over countless lifetimes, that accounts for evolution, DNA, the various forms that conscious beings take, and the various ways in which they experience their existence and the world they live in. So, for every sentient life form, the three spheres of agent, action, and object are dependent arisings based on individual karmic appearances rather than inherently existing objective realities. The world that a fly experiences is far different from the world a human being experiences. Neither of those worlds exist as objective, inherently existing realities. Neither the fly agent nor the human agent exist as objective, inherently existing entities. The habitual intentional actions they each engage in do not exist inherently, but arise in dependence upon their conditioned responses to the functioning of their particular dependently arising aggregates. And the phenomena which appear to them as the objects of their environment don't exist inherently the way they appear, but exist in dependence upon the way in which their particular aggregates perceive and conceive them. The cognition of the fly and the cognition of the human are not the same. Each of them are alike in that they have conscious awareness, but their perceptions, conceptions, reasoning, judgment, intuition, and levels of knowledge are quite different. They are the same in that they each want to achieve a state of being which is accompanied by the fulfillment or gratification of their desires, needs, or appetites. And they are both attracted to that. In this way, both the fly and the human grasp a personal identity and grasp the phenomena to which that personal identity is attracted. Neither of them wants to suffer, and both have an aversion for it. So in this way, they both have an aversion for the phenomena and beings that obstruct their desires and needs. And this is the same with all, not just flies and humans, but same with all beings that we can observe. From the Buddhist point of view, the fly and the human being are both the same in that they want happiness and don't want to suffer. That's the Buddhist point. They are both the same in that they are ignorant of the empty, dependently arising nature of their reality. They are also both the same in that they have consciousnesses which are capable of experiencing changing states of awareness. This is impermanence, and it's very extremely important in order for us to be able to transform. Their differences are due to their individual karmic propensities and conditioning. According to Buddhism, the fly and the human both have the innate potential to achieve liberation by removing all of their afflictive obscurations, and the potential to attain the omniscience of enlightenment by removing all of their cognitive obscurations. The whole point of the Buddha's teachings is to help sentient beings identify what suffering is, to identify the causes of suffering, to understand that the cessation of suffering is possible, and that there are pathways of consciousness that will lead to the cessation of suffering. By practicing the methods the Buddha laid out in the Dharma teachings, sentient beings can gradually purify their karma, accumulate positive potential and wisdom, attain higher states of consciousness and rebirth, choose a suitable vehicle or means by which they can navigate the levels and pathways of consciousness that lead to liberation from suffering, and ultimately achieve full enlightenment for the benefit of all living beings. I think we'll end it there, but is there any, I don't know, question or discussion about that? It's a
No,
lot.
let's, I'd like to suggest that we just go, because the dedication, is
Okay.
about preserving that momentum.
All right.
And I think I'm gonna introduce the dedication, but I'm not gonna do that. But what Christopher was basically, if you summarize from a simplistic point of view, the point is do all that you are able and are aware and know how to do to preserve the momentum of your consciousness towards liberation and enlightenment, bodhicitta. So this dedication that we do is about, we're saying, may such and such not decline, may it stay strong in me and keep evolving and growing and expanding. So the dedication is about relates directly to this quote, pathway of consciousness. What that's saying is keep the momentum going in the direction towards liberation. And again, then you can see it becomes more and more evident the more clearly we look at this, why our moment by moment decisions or our actions of body, speech, and mind, those are what the momentum is made out of. Anyway, so I would just suggest we go straight to it.
Okay.
May the precious Bodhi
Good
light
mind.
not yet born arise and grow, and may that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
The Bodhi mind is talking about bodhicitta, that mind.
And may the
View of emptiness.
We're talking about the view of emptiness that I am cultivating, that we are cultivating.
Mhm.
May the view of emptiness not yet born arise and grow. And may that born have no decline, but increase
forevermore. The final dedication.
Yeah. Ultimately, we go back to where we started, realizing that we're part of this Mahayana lineage, totally dependent on information being conveyed to our minds so that we can make this transformation and feed this positive momentum that we're talking about. So we need, as it says here in the final dedication, in all my lives, may I not be separated from true lamas, and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma, fully perfecting the virtues of levels and paths. May I speedily attain the state of Vajradhara, the primordial Buddha.
So I didn't do it this week because of time constraints and things that were going on, but both of the videos I'll get them up online, and plus the study guide will be there. So when we meet next time, we can discuss this a little more, a little back and forth discussion about what's being said here, because the three spheres is no small thing. It is the thing that has to be realized before one realizes the omniscience of Buddhahood. So to even put it into words like this is it's very difficult to do it, and then to try to grasp an understanding of what those words mean is important for us to try to do. It's sort of like a beginner's view of the three spheres. Like I was mentioning before, I was watching Tibetan children talk about this, and they were just laughing in hysterics at the end of it because they couldn't understand what they were reading or saying. So they could, to a degree, yes, but it was laughable for them. They just got giddy and silly.
And thanks everybody, because it really means a lot to me personally, and I think all of us sort of feel this to various levels, but we're together, we keep coming back every week, looking at how we can achieve this,
Mhm.
this purified momentum, and it's like incredibly rare and precious to have friends who want to do that.
I also would
You know?
say is that the questions that you all raise are extremely beneficial because it forces us all to assess this, talk about it, hone it, get it to a point where we can all come to some kind of agreement about it and an understanding about it. So that's the questions are very, very good. I don't think you shouldn't ask the questions because it's important for our growth and our
I
understanding.
would go as far as to say the questions, and I'm going to single out Brian Herman, but in some ways, Brian Herman's questions maybe 3 or so months ago sort of triggered a lot of what we're talking about now,
Yeah.
and Christopher's, the depth of his reading and thinking.
Also, Anne Renthal's questions are extremely
That's
good.
true.
Very, very good. She's not as vocal about it, but she emails me all the time with the questions, and her questions are right on target. They sure are.
Anyway,
So they're very, very
questions
helpful. Yeah.
the questions are,
Yeah.
again, we are just lucky to have each other
Yeah.
to sort of bounce off these
I
ideas.
think this is a great way to do it. It's a great way to
Well,
study. and
we
grow.
certainly always appreciate the effort you put into learning and relaying and teaching to us and continuing to, I would say, expand our minds, but also blow our minds open with all of these very challenging concepts to come to grips with.
I totally agree with you. I mean, Kavita will vouch for this. Last night, as I was continuing to work on this, I'd say this is bending my mind here. This is because even myself, I'm doing this. I'm writing this down. I'm studying what they're saying and going, "Oh my God, this is so weird." But there's a part of it that makes sense to me. That I can see some logic in it when you take it within the framework of how the Buddha is presenting, for instance, evolution. It's a much broader view that encompasses lifetimes and beginninglessness, And that's just something to take on board as a hypothesis at this point, yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
So, yeah,
Right. We'll see you next week then.
okay, thank you, everybody.
Guys.
So, Tracy, your ghostly figure looks divine.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. I'm gonna make us,
Okay,
we're gonna
bye,
be
y'all.
over and out if I could, Zoom has a new controls here, so I have to figure out how to get out of here and not ruin what I've done. Where does it say to just, okay, down here, stop recording.
I'm excited. I just noticed an email that the fly grubs for the chickens are on their way.